Right and legal aren't always the same thing. Sometimes society can be so focused on its norm and regulation that the distinction between right and wrong becomes grey and blurred. Good evening everyone and welcome to another episode of Nerve Pain Rent, series in which I try to make a creative living out of my 2 degrees in criminology. Today we are going to talk about a show that makes the distinction between good and evil and the grey area of moral ambiguity, the pivotal point of the narration. Pulp and thought-provoking. Today we're talking of course about Vigilantes, My Hero Academia illegals. But before we continue, if you want to support me and my need for external validation, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. What is Vigilantes, My Hero Academia illegals? This title is way too long. What is Vigilantes about? Written by Hideyuki Furuhashi and illustrated by Bettencourt from 2016 to 2022, Vigilantes, I'm gonna stick with that name, serves both as a spin-off and prequel to Kohei Horikoshi's My Hero Academia. The story revolves around the protagonist Koichi Mawari, a young man that decides to use his non-spectacular and not battle-oriented quirk to help other people in their everyday life, despite not being a licensed hero. After he and the online idol Pop Step are attacked and jumped by a street gang, they are saved by the enigmatic Knuckleduster, an old man that, impressed by their selflessness, convinced the 2 young kids to join in his crusade, remarking the importance of taking the justice into our own hands. What Knuckleduster suggests is that the children become vigilantes, people that work outside of the legal system to help others. How do we approach vigilantes from a criminological perspective? The My Hero Academia spin-off raises a very important question from both an ethical and moral point of view. Is there any difference between legal and right? To understand this, first we need to understand what a vigilante is. The concept of vigilantism originates from the Latin word vigilans, which means attentive, careful, terms that throughout the passing of the generation came to encapsulate all the romanticized element of private wars and personal vendettas, culminating in today's definition of vigilantism, as an act of preventing, investigating, and punishing crimes and offenders without any form of legal authority. A vigilante is an individual that undertakes responsibilities and action of public safety without any form of commission or authority from the status quo. This is exactly what's happening in My Hero Academia illegals. The protagonists of the story, even though involved in pro-social activities, are breaking the laws themselves, because they are taking on responsibility of public safety without being licensed by the state, making them fall, technically speaking, in the same category of the criminals they are trying to stop. To understand the reason why such acts of vigilantism started in the world of My Hero Academia in the first place, no theoretical approach is better suited than the one offered to us by John Locke and his social contract. Developed in 1689, the social contract theory profoundly shaped the way in which the relationship between individuals and their government is understood. The core concept of Locke's theory revolves around the idea that society is formed throughout the stipulation of a contract. Locke conceived the concept of state of nature, intended as a pre-political condition in which individuals were free and equal. In such a situation, that kind of freedom came with a cost, the risk of losing it, due to its natural vulnerability. There were no regulations, so people were able to do whatever they want. Without laws and enforcement mechanism, the natural freedom was extremely fragile. Because of that fear, according to Locke, individuals willingly gave up their freedom, exchanging it for security and order, creating what he defined as a social contract. The individual's liberty and freedom is given to the state in exchange for security and protection. Because of that, the government legitimacy is based on the ability and the capability of defending said rights. The government has one job: to establish and enforce the laws that protect its citizens. He then argues that if the government becomes tyrannical, abuses its power, or it's not able to meet its end of the deal, it fails the social contract. If the government breaks those laws, infringes those fundamental rights, people have the right to resist and to overthrow said government. According to Locke, this is not a recognition or endorsement for anarchy. On the contrary, it's a recognition of the ultimate sovereignty that resides within people. When the state fails the individual, citizens have the moral and ethical obligation to fight back, to resist and overthrow the government, establishing a new order that would protect and defend the interests of its citizens. How do we apply the concept of the social contract to My Hero Academia illegals? In the series, we have the chance to understand a little bit better how the world of MHA actually works. We have a close focus on the Hero Public Safety Commission, a law enforcement agency that is responsible for maintaining the relationship between the hero community and the society. This organization, despite being committed to protect civilians and help the social order, is riddled and swamped in bureaucracy, corruption and hypocrisy. The heroes that are supposed to be the society guardians most of the time care more about sponsorship visibility compared to the idea of actually helping people. And to do so, they receive constant help by the Public Hero Commission, allowing them to maintain the facade that their society is in order. And in this labyrinth of paper, ratification and public rankings, the ones that pay the price are always the common citizens. And this is perfectly shown to us in the first interaction we have with a vigilante Knuckleduster. Jumping off a roof in a dark alley to stop an assault, Knuckleduster said that it's pointless for the victims to wait for heroes, because none of them would risk to stain their precious costume for a simple street brawl in mud away from the spotlight. And in this vacuum between legal system and the need for protection, vigilantes come in. They don't step outside of the law because they simply want to be rebels. They don't break the laws for personal gain or in the seek of thrill. Vigilantes simply take the matter of justice in their own hands because the official, bureaucratic, corrupted and flawed system leaves the very people it's want to protect completely vulnerable. The regular law enforcement is too slow or too restricted by the norms and regulation, and most of the time pro-heroes, despite all their power, turn a blind eye to the problems of society if they don't give them the desired attention and recognition. We even see that the number one hero, All Might, feels suffocated by the bureaucracy and the regulation of the Hero Committee, because he turned what was once a noble profession of helping others, something paradoxically complicated and convoluted. Almost like society doesn't want heroes to help people. Because of that, we see that even All Might, technically speaking, indulges in acts of what we consider as vigilantism, constantly helping people around him whenever he has the chance to do so, without following the proper administrative procedures. The aspect of bureaucracy even started a rise of tension between the hero community and the law enforcement. They start to consider those spontaneous acts of heroism as a proper problem, reprehending and criticizing those professional heroes whose activities are not approved by the Commission. And in this discrepancy lies the most compelling question. What makes an individual a hero? A genuine desire to help others, regardless of his situation and his own safety. But if that freedom is taken away for the sake of bureaucracy and order, doesn't that mean the society has its priorities messed up? If heroes are not able to help others whenever those people are in need, are they really heroes in the first place? It's exactly in this grey area that we can apply the principles offered to us by the social contract theory. Before the blooming of the quirks, the one in My Hero Academia was the equivalent of our real-life society, created after the institutionalization of the social contract. But the introduction of the quirk aspect threw the world into chaos. Absolutely legitimate. If a kid's turned into a bird at the age of 4, panic would be the only reasonable response. Because of that panic, the world of MHA turned back to what was considered as a state of nature, a reality in which the regulations of the previous order simply cannot be applied. This new world required a creation of a new system, able not only to protect and defend the citizens, but to regulate the new phenomenon of superpowers. And this need led to the existence of the society we experience now in My Hero Academia, a world in which quirks are regulated, in which their use in public is allowed only to specific individuals, and in which any transgression is administered and punished thanks to the institutionalized figure of the heroes. But the only way to achieve that kind of safety and protection was to give up freedom. Citizens throughout the planet sacrificed their own freedom, exchanging it for the feeling of safety. But in that transaction, something got lost, and that was the pure sense of heroism. In the name of order and stability, heroes need to file paper and submit requests simply to help people, causing the very people they sworn to protect now suffer, overshadowed by the ocean of paperwork and the importance of popularity contest. And it is in the suffering of the individuals that we can see how the society of My Hero Academia faced the social contract, missing its core purpose. People sacrifice their freedom for safety, but now, due to the paradox of the situation, common citizens are the one in danger. And as a response to the failure of the government, vigilantes arise, putting in action the pure essence of the Lockean resistance. When the system that is supposed to protect the individuals fails, people need to take the matter of justice in their own hands. What is interesting is the fact that the rising level of people indulging in acts of vigilantism should have led the existing government in acknowledging its own flaws and mistakes. But on the contrary, the MHA government opts for the opposite direction. State and heroes start to criminalize the very people that are trying to do what heroes are supposed to do. And because of that, vigilantes are now labeled and treated on the same level as common criminals. Not because they are hurting people, but because they dare to challenge the status quo. In doing so, we can see that the hero society is not only failing at its job, helping people, but it's actively suppressing those who dare to expose its weaknesses, and they're trying to compensate its structural problems. This will create a vicious circle, in which the more the government neglects certain communities, the more the vigilantes feel the moral obligation and ethical duty to act. But the more they act, the harsher the system reprehends them, fueling in the general public the perception that something is not right, the idea that people are not safe, and that, therefore, they need to take justice in their own hands. As Locke argued, the legitimacy of a government depends on its ability to protect and defend its citizens. If the state stops doing so, and it becomes more concerned in preserving its authority instead of defending its citizens, then the government is no longer legitimate. In this situation, people not only are justified to resist, but they are morally obligated to do so. The vigilantes in the world of My Hero Academia become the perfect incarnation of the idea of resistance, upholding moral and ethics more than the so-called heroes. They aren't simple lawbreakers, they aren't criminals, they are people that feel forced to break the law, to cross that line, because the system leaves them no other choice, making vigilantes the most iconic and emblematic symptom of a broken social contract. And now you have it. You know a little bit more about criminology and sociology today than 10 minutes ago. And the next time you are stuck in a conversation with your most patriotic colleague, you can try to shake its mind by going, did you ever consider that it's our moral and ethical duty to oppose toward the failure of a government instead of keep endorsing its legitimacy? But what do you think? Does Locke's social contract theory applies well to the case study of My Hero Academia illegal? Vigilantes? Or other theories could have been applied? Please let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this episode, what we have been doing so far, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Moreover, if you want to hear me ranting and screaming on a semi-daily basis, don't forget also to check the other social media accounts, like Instagram, TikTok, and very soon Spotify. I finally find out how to do so. Thanks again for joining me today, and up until next time, have a nice rest of the evening.